Right, hello. It's the next day, it's time for another stream. I've given the whole thing some thought. I I don't think Kazma's gonna be the killer. That just wouldn't work. I I also did ignore a few possibilities when I considered all the killers that were possible. And that is that there are some dead characters who aren't listed in the court record yet. Um who might not be dead because, I mean, Kazuma wasn't dead, so, you know, Kumi has sort of set himself up for that. So, let's go.
We have returned, my dear fellows.
Welcome back to Britain, and thank you for your timely help.
Think nothing of it. I believe you've had an even more wearing day than Mikotoba and I, no?
You could say that. We were on the brink of defeat in court earlier.
So, this prosecutor, Sogi, had you on the ropes, did he? And he's your best friend, you say?
Well, he's not really the man I knew in Japan anymore. Kazuma's changed. Oh, Mr. Naruhodo. I mean, it's incredible to think that he'd even entertain the idea of acting as the Reaper's assassin.
Well, nevertheless, you must introduce me. After all, I've only ever met the young man as a corpse.
When all this started, almost a year ago now, Mr. Shone still hasn't told us the truth about what really happened back then. About the motivation for what he himself described as a great detective's lie.
Now then, I must say, it's really quite a journey all the way to France.
Well, it is another country, Mr. Sholmes. So, what news of Judge Jigoku?
We took him to Scotland Yard. The investigating detectives there have a lot of questions for the man.
Poor Professor Mikotoba. This must be quite a shock for him.
Ah, yes. I picked this up at the telegraph office on our way home.
What is it?
Surely you haven't forgotten already. I put upon you, for the matter, only yesterday. You put upon me, Sholmes. I had to fill out your telegram to Japan and foot the bill as well.
Oh, you've had a reply already? What was so urgent, though, Mr. Sholmes? There's a few things that we don't... There was the secret message from the end of the first game. We haven't talked about that at all yet. There was... We don't know, like, why Asashin killed Dr. John H. Wilson. Or any of that shit, really. It's all a bit strange.
Such matters can wait until later. I'm far too hungry for an involved conversation at present.
Oh, that's good news, because supper is ready, everyone.
Ah, and what a feast it is! If I were none the wiser, I'd think the trial were won already. Roast beef, kippers, stew, steak and kidney pie. Steak and kidney pie, Yorkshire pudding.
Tomorrow could be a very long day, so eat up.
In that case, I think I'll seat myself just here. This place appears to be only one set. This place appears to be the only one set with a helping of pheasant as well. Oh, this place appears to be the only one set with a helping of pheasant as well.
Oh, sorry, Hurley, not there.
Why ever not? Are we in set places this evening?
Yes, and that place is for Susie's daddy.
Or me?
That's right, I made it especially for you, Professor Mickey.
I see. Well, that's terribly kind of you.
It's a shame, really.
What do you mean?
Well, for a brief moment, I believed it. That Susie and I were half-sisters, I mean. Oh. Iris, do you mean? Yeah, I know now. I overheard yesterday. I secretly listened in on the conversation you had after I tricked you all into thinking I'd left.
What?
The misunderstanding arose because of that autopsy report from 10 years ago. But actually, it turned out that neither Dr. Wilson nor Professor Mikotoba are Iris's father. What? What?
Yes, about that, Iris. You know I
know. You can't tell me at the moment. Oh, Iris. The pheasant is by way of an apology. I'm sorry for eavesdropping.
Oh, no, that's quite all right. Then why don't I get any apologetic pheasant? Then why don't I get any apologetic pheasant?
So just who is Iris's father? I suppose that's not something we'll be finding out today.
So then, let us dine, while our largely pheasantless plates are still piping hot.
A fine idea, Sholmes. It all looks absolutely delicious.
Eat as much as you'd like. There are always seconds.
This could be our last chance to ask questions before tomorrow's trial. About that telegram from Japan, and about Kazuma. I can't let this opportunity slip away. Is it just me, or does the wall look darker? Oh, the curtains are closed. It's night time. Wow. That's why it looks so different. It looks so serious in here. Mr. Sholmes, what are you doing?
Surely it's abundantly clear that I wasn't brooding over Mikotoba's refusal to share his pheasant with me. Nevertheless, I felt the need to withdraw from the social circle for a while and look on with hungry eyes.
Sorry, Hurley, but I cooked that pheasant especially for Susie's daddy.
Even though I've played the role of father to you for far longer.
Mr. Sholmes, could I discuss some things with you?
Certainly, my dear fellow, I find myself quite in the mood for a spell of conversation. No doubt, you're hungry to learn more of my deep love of game.
I can probably contain my curiosity on that one.
You needn't look at me in that fashion.
In what fashion?
It seems that before we discuss the pheasant, we have some rather unpheasant matters to discuss.
Mr. Sholmes, would you mind looking at this?
This is hardly the time, Mr. Naruhodo, as I'm sure you will appreciate.
Oh, no, of course not.
My attention is entirely drawn to one single matter now, the pheasant.
Anyone would think you hadn't eaten in weeks.
You see these little things all over the place. You see these little things all over the place, don't you? It's the part on the top of a pocket watch that you twist to set the time, isn't it? It's called the crown, I believe. A watch would be quite useless without one. The crown? Like what sits on top of a monarch's head? It's a very grand name for such a tiny part. But actually, yes, Mr. Naruhodo, if this is a crown, I have a feeling I might have seen a monarch around here somewhere with a very bare head. If by monarch you mean pocket watch, then I'm quite sure you have. I don't know if it matches though, look. Look at that, it's perfectly circular with no like sticking out bits. What a charming little rabbit. So, this is where the little policeman figurine key goes into the wind watch. Winding up, it's up every single day for 10 years without fail. Yes, it was obviously a thing of great importance to the inspector. Or a reminder of the past, lest he forget. The glass over the face really is badly cracked, look. What a shame, when the inspector clearly looked after it so carefully. I imagine Mr. Sholmes could repair it, don't you? Yes, I should think so. He's very adept at things like this. A useful man to have around, in fact. But kindly remember that he's a great detective, Mr. Naruhodo, not an odd job man. Look at this though, it's like severed in a funny way. What do you think, Miss Usato? I feel sure I know exactly what will fit here. Really? I was just thinking precisely the same thing. We're about to see that little round component. It's actually a part of Inspector Gregson's broken pocket watch. Really? I was just thinking precisely that too. A perfect fit. I knew it. Alright, perhaps you knew it. Perhaps you knew it. I'll make a note of this new information at once. But look at it very carefully, look. Look how it's severed at a funny shape. Look, it looks wavy, yeah? Hopefully 720p is enough to see that. And this, however, doesn't show any sign of weirdness, but I guess that's not important. Karamat, the Great Blade. You do wonder why Kazuma attacked the holder of Gregson's trunk. So, what was in the telegram you received back from Japan then?
Ah, this. I thank my lucky stars it arrived in time. Record found as indicated. Duplicate follows. K. Asogi, A. Shin, T. Gregson, J. Wilson.
Yes, here it is. Here's the 4 names.
K. Asogi, A. Shin, T. Gregson, J. Wilson.
What? Those 4 names? Are they the 4 assassins? We've come across that exact same list before. They came up in that unforgettable case last spring.
What appeared to be a simple case of aggravated murder turned out to be masking monumental intrigue. A plot that involved the sale of British governmental secrets to foreign states. In exposing the means by which those secrets were being leaked, we deciphered a fragment of the message. K. Asogi, A. Shin, T. Gregson, J. Wilson. But we didn't find the names out until the case was over, and we never did get to the bottom of what they meant. All we knew was that the information had been sent by somebody in the British government to somebody in Japan. So, why are the names coming up again now? Yes, where did the sender of your telegram discover them, Mr. Sholmes?
I have here the message I had wired yesterday. Allow me to read it to you. Enter Judge Jigoku's office, undetected, and investigate telegram records. Expect to find communication from Britain dated 1 year ago. List of 4 names. Need by tomorrow. Naruhodo.
What? Oh my god, is this Satoru Hosonaga who did this? It would be fucking epic if it was.
List of 4 names. Need by tomorrow. Naruhodo.
I sent it to a detective I know who specializes in clandestine missions of this nature. You asked Inspector Hosonaga to undertake such an onerous task for you? And in my name? I wonder what guise he opted for this time.
My dear fellows, it was a matter of great urgency, you understand.
Anyway, the list of names was found in Seishiro's office, as Sholmes predicted. So you mean that that mysterious collection of names that was sent from Britain to Japan was... It was sent to Judge Jigoku. He was the intended recipient. I don't believe it. But that doesn't answer the question of what the list of names actually signifies. It's either targets for murder or the assassins themselves, right? Because Tobias Gregson is dead and he was part of the Reaper. A. Shin is dead and she was part of the Reaper. J. Wilson is dead. We don't know if he was part of the Reaper, but very well could be if he signed off on Clint Van Zykes' autopsy report and that turns out to be dodgy. And lastly, Kazuma Asogi, who has now been shown, well, he died. Oh, but it's so strange, isn't it?
I did formulate a hypothesis about that. But without a shred of evidence, I couldn't possibly have shared it.
Mr. Sholmes looks deadly serious for once. That tragedy we had to go through on the SS Burya. It was all for nothing. Kazuma wasn't dead at all. We were completely taken in by the lie you told us. Your great detective's lie.
I took no pleasure in deceiving you.
However, at the time,
all that concerned me was preventing the young man's study tour from taking place, whatever the cost.
What?
I capitalized on the events that transpired to see that he was sent back to Japan.
His remains, you mean?
Precisely, Mr. Sato. And then I made sure that somebody else was sent to Britain in his stead.
Oh my, you mean?
The arrangement between our 2 countries was already in place. 1 university student, lawyer, and 1 judicial assistant to be accommodated on a study tour.
In other words, by arranging for someone else to fill the place originally intended for Mr. Asogi, I would successfully prevent the man from arriving on our shores for several years at least.
Wait, do you mean to say that it was all in aid of stopping Kazuma coming to Britain? That's why you...
Think back, Mr. Naruhodo. Was there not somebody who quite casually urged you to continue on the voyage to England?
The terms of the study tour were negotiated by the Department of Justice in both Great Britain and Japan. In the light of Mr. Asogi's unfortunate death, I'm afraid the study tour can no longer go ahead.
My dear fellows, the majority of problems have an extremely simple solution, you know. All you require is one lawyer, and the study tour can continue, surely.
But there is no one else with the necessary qualifications, Mr. Sholmes. We know of no other lawyer.
The voyage to London still promises a good month of time. Ample opportunity, I would say, to find ourselves another suitable lawyer.
So, you manipulated me?
I've often remarked on the extraordinary lengths to which friendship will drive a man. I was quite sure that you would rise to the challenge for your late friend.
I don't believe it. But if it was all contrived... I mean, what happened was treated by the authorities as murder. A woman was mistakenly arrested as the perpetrator. What do you suppose became of her?
Naturally, I didn't allow the misapprehension to have any serious repercussions. I subsequently explained everything and assisted the unfortunate soul in finding the foreign refuge she sought.
I seem to remember Miss Susato and I had some rather strong words for her.
Well, she was certainly not devoid of all guilt. She deserved every word, I'm sure.
I wonder if she made it to America then. I'm afraid I simply cannot comprehend it. Why would you go to such lengths, Mr. Sholmes? Why were you so determined to stop Kazuma-sama from reaching Britain?
Truth is, 12 months ago, there was already a very tangible omen of the impending tragedy, you see.
Oh.
An omen that, at this very moment in time, is close at hand.
An omen of all these tragic events that already existed a year ago is close at hand? We need to find out exactly what Mr. Sholmes knows. A year ago, an omen. A year ago. What if I just move? Oh, I can't move. What the fuck do I do then? I haven't soft locked myself, have I? Some weird way.
It's not like Mikotoba is standing here for me to talk to or anything. So there's something I have to present. Am I stupid? Is there supposed to be something obvious to present? Help me, game. There is no room for doubt with your instructions in this telegram, Mr. Sholmes. You were very clear that it was Judge Jigoku's office that should be searched. So, you obviously knew that's where the list of names would be found. K. Asogi, A. Shin, T. Gregson, J. Wilson. But we only learnt of those 4 names just over 6 months ago now. And only because they appeared as part of the top-secret government communications that were leaked.
That's true, yes. But at the time, you were unaware of the background. You see, those 4 names were wired to Japan around 6 months before that. Approximately this time last year, in fact, when you were both still in Japan. It really would be hypocrisy on my part to reprove others for intercepting state secrets. Because after all, I'm perpetually eavesdropping on communications between the British and Japanese governments.
You're perpetually doing what?
How? Never mind the details, but you should know. No secret is safe from Herlock Sholmes, and he has designs on knowing it.
Oh my, Mr. Sholmes, what a fabulous line.
Now, 1 month after that list of 4 names was wired to the recipient, Jigoku, in Japan, Dr. John H. Wilson was murdered. As soon as I learnt of the incident, a hypothesis rapidly took shape in my mind. As it turned out, I was partly correct and partly mistaken. Nevertheless, it was the beginning of all the tragic events that were to follow.
Mr. Sholmes, please, tell us all you know. Tell us about these 4 names and the tragedy to which they're all somehow connected.
As I said, when I learnt of Dr. Wilson's murder in Japan, my mind immediately turned to those 4 names, because you see, there was someone else on the list who I believed to be recently deceased.
What? Who?
A Shin, as it was transcribed in Japanese script, is in actual fact Miss Asa Shin. That was a familiar name to me. She was a professional killer, well known among London's unsavory classes.
Oh, I see.
But she had completely vanished from existence several months before Wilson's murder. So I came to the logical conclusion that she had herself been killed. And accordingly, I became fearful for the lives of the remaining 2 persons on the list. Ah, Kay Asogi and T. Gregson. Owing to our proximity, I decided to take measures to protect Gregson myself. But I determined it would be safest if young Asogi were to stay away from Britain. Ah, so that's why you went to such lengths to prevent his study tour from going ahead. Exactly. So, you already knew who Kazuma-sama was, Mr. Sholmes. Oh yes, Sholmes and I have exchanged correspondence for years.
My wire isn't long enough, fucking hell.
Oh yes, Sholmes and I have exchanged correspondence for years. I'd recounted many tales about Asogi to him in my letters, and the news of Dr. Wilson's death, of course.
So, Dr. Wilson is dead then? I didn't know.
Oh, Iris.
I know he wasn't my daddy, but still, that's very sad.
I'm so sorry, Iris. We knew the significance of the name, obviously, but we just couldn't bring ourselves to tell you.
No.
But what you just told us, Mr. Sholmes, doesn't completely tie in with the facts. There's one big hole in your hypothesis. A big hole, Mr. Naruhodo. Ah, yes. You mean about Asashin, I presume. Oh, of course. Exactly. She wasn't killed, was she? She was in Japan, posing as a visiting student under the assumed name of Giselle Brett. I'm glad you're keeping up, my dear fellow. But I only became aware of that fact 2 days ago, in the foyer of the great Waterloo Hotel.
Oh, when he overheard us.
Ah. And upon hearing that startling revelation, the hypothesis I'd formed surrounding those 4 names was completely turned topsy.
What? Topsy?
They were killers, not killed.
What do you mean when you say your hypothesis was turned topsy, Mr. Sholmes?
I had believed all 4 names on the list to be the names of victims.
Oh! Oh, it's like the thingy. It's, oh my god, it's like Gregson's notebook. Oh, is it meant to be that A. Shin kills J. Wilson and K. Asogi kills T. Gregson? No. The game is actually making me think it's Asogi.
I had believed all 4 names to be the list of victims. However, I was mistaken.
Very much so. Asashin was a killer.
So this telegram is a list of both victims and killers, is it? Indeed, and it would seem that Miss Shin was dispatched from Britain with the sole intention of dispatching Dr. Wilson. Her visiting student status being merely a front.
Ah. Which would, of course, explain why no motive could be determined for her actions.
So the real reason Dr. Wilson was killed by Asashin is because he was the target of an assassination.
And forearmed with that knowledge, fresh consideration of this telegram puts the list in a very different perspective.
What do you mean?
Well, does it not strike you? There is another among the 4, who subsequently became a visiting student.
Wait, you mean...
But of course, a name you know only too well.
You mean Kazuma?
Oh!
He did say in court earlier today.
Yes, on the 31st of October, I accompanied Inspector Gregson to Dunkirk in order to carry out a mission. And the mission was the assassination of the Mark. He didn't say that the Mark was Jigoku. The Mark could have been Gregson. Young Mr. Asogi accepted that mission a year ago now. Surely not. In conclusion, this document is a contract of sorts. An international agreement, one might say, detailing an assassin exchange. An assassin exchange? How could Kazuma possibly have got involved in something like that? Let's assume we have two parties, each wishing to dispose of a distinct individual. Those two parties then make a contract to swap their respective assassination targets. That would then be an assassin exchange. So, to begin with, the British assassin is dispatched as a visiting student to Japan, where she kills her target. Judge Jigoku is the one who signed this so-called contract of exchange of assassins. Realizing that Kazuma wasn't going to kill Gregson, Jigoku took it into his own hands, knowing that he needed to uphold his side of the bargain. As for who he agreed it with was probably Lord Strongheart, because he's the only government figure we know. So Strongheart was like, I want Dr. Wilson dead, because he did the autopsy, or signed off on the autopsy of Clint Van Zykes, which like has a large significance for some reason. Meanwhile, Judge Jigoku wanted the assassination of Gregson? No. So, to begin with, the British assassin is dispatched as a visiting student to Japan, where she kills her target. And then, the Japanese assassin is dispatched as a visiting student to Britain in order to eliminate his target. It certainly does sound like an exchange. But what on earth is the point? Don't forget, Naruhodo, that the British assassin at least escaped conviction, thanks to diplomatic immunity afforded by consular jurisdiction. Oh, yes. Such jurisdiction should be null and void under the terms of the new treaty between our two countries. So the fact it was brought into play suggests intervention at the very highest levels. Highest levels? The first case and the last case.
These murders were linked were two sides of the same coin, linked not by a common motive, but by contractual agreement. As such, they appeared utterly unrelated. Yet in truth, the assassins were complicit in one singular, devilish scheme. That dissociation and the safeguard of diplomatic immunity were, I believe, the motivation behind this plot. But wait a minute, Sholmes. If this telegram really is describing the exchange of assassins that you're suggesting, it would mean
that the Japanese killer's target was never Seishiro Jigoku at all. It would mean Asogi's target was actually Inspector Gregson.
What? Kazuma was here for Gregson. So Judge Jigoku wasn't actually the mark. Yes, that's exactly what it would mean.
I hold myself personally responsible for failing to keep the inspector safe.
Mr. Sholmes?
I told him of my fears and implored him to seek a transfer to an overseas position.
Oh.
Obviously, with the young pickpocket in tow.
Yes, Gina. Come to think of it, Inspector Gregson did mention that to us at the Great Exhibition, that he'd been transferring to the Paris police and taking Gina with him.
But without informing me, he engaged in one last assignment, it seems. And sadly, it turned out to be his very last.
It's too much to take in. All right, everyone. That's quite enough of all that serious talk for one day. Isn't it, Hurley? I mean, look at the time.
Ah, quite right, Iris. We must conclude our preparations for tomorrow.
What preparations?
Well, I think I shall make my way back to my hotel room now. This has certainly been a night to remember.
It is a little bit sad, though. I mean, I like the idea of you being my daddy. Because then Susie would have been my big sister. I'm sorry, Iris. I know, Iris. I was thinking quite the same thing. Were you? But if somebody like me would be worthy, I would be delighted to become your sister. What? Really? Oh yes, without question. So, you'll teach me all the ways you know how to throw Runo to the floor? Yes, of course. It would be my pleasure. You didn't have to agree quite so vividly. Oh, but wait a minute. If Susie's going to be my big sister, you could be my big brother if you want, Runo.
Huh? I mean, yes, of course. If you'll have me, I'll gladly be your brother. If you'll have me, I'll gladly be your brother. Well done, Iris. We must always be mindful of feelings. I've raised you so well.
Because being sensitive is your strong suit naturally. Right, I'm going to work extra hard for tomorrow now. Because it's for my big brother and sister. There's all this talk about preparing for tomorrow. Preparing what? Hehe. You'll just have to wait and see. Oh.
Good luck in court tomorrow. I'm expecting a sterling performance.
I'll do my very best, of course. So the overnight break in the trial's proceedings became a crucial turning point, exposing new truths while posing new conundrums. That list of 4 names on the telegram in Judge Jigoku's office, and the extraordinary assassination plot in which my best friend had somehow become involved. I felt as though I had been plunged into an even greater darkness all of a sudden. But at the same time, I felt sure I would see the light again soon. Because I was lucky enough to have the most wonderful family in the world standing steadfastly behind me. Oh, I didn't end it at a good spot. Dun 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 dun. Old Bailey courtroom. We ain't even got an antechamber scene. What the hell?
Before we begin today, I have a brief announcement. As with the closed trial 10 years ago, some astonishing facts have come to light in these proceedings. The revelation that the well-known Reaper is actually an organization illegally executing its own brand of justice. And the discovery that a respected yard inspector was at its heart until he himself perished in an assassination plot. Well, I say to all members of the judiciary present here on this occasion that we will stop at nothing to uncover the whole truth behind these disturbing findings. Counsels, you will undertake this trial with the resolve to pursue the truth until the bitter end.
Resolve, yes. That's my intention. My lord, if I may inquire.
The defendant may speak.
On what grounds is Kazuma Asogi permitted to continue in his role as prosecutor? He has admitted to colluding with the victim in a plot to assassinate an innocent man. He shouldn't be enjoying the privilege of freedom, let alone leading the prosecution. I submitted a written petition to Lord Strongheart, requesting that judgment of my transgressions be delayed by 1 day. You did what? You did what? In today's proceedings, I intend to expose everything. My whole life for the last 10 years has all been leading up to this day. Kazuma, whatever the outcome of this trial, I give my word that I will accept whatever punishment is deemed appropriate, however severe. And I suggest you prepare yourself to the same, Reaper. Kazuma is bristling with hostility today. I get the distinct impression we're headed into a very dangerous territory. Is that really even Kazuma-sama standing before us?
As an extreme exception to normal practices, I have granted this prosecutor's request. The defense finds this acceptable, I presume.
Yes, my lord.
In that case, in the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby declare this court to be in session again. We resume the closed hearing of Barak van Zykes. Da 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 da.
The defense is ready, my lord. The prosecution is more than ready.
Very well then. This preamble has taken long enough. Prosecutor Asogi, begin.
As you wish, my lord. Prosecution calls the first witness to the stand. Being Seishiro Jigoku, bring Seishiro Jigoku into the courtroom. At last then, we've reached the final battle. He's putting literally everything on the line now in order to get to the truth. Come on, Ryunosuke. It's time for that steely resolve, because this is going to test it to the limit. Witness, state your name and occupation for the court. Okay, how am I doing his voice now?
I do say, yes. Ah, so it was you who issued this, was it?
Your subpoena. I did what was necessary.
Well, look what the young man has become. I didn't think I'd see the day when you take that tone with me, I must say.
The witness will ensure his responses are pertinent to the questions asked. My name is Seishiro Jigoku, a Supreme Court judge from the Empire of Japan.
16 years ago, this man came to London as a visiting student. 6 years later, he returned to Japan. As well as presiding over the Supreme Court, he is also currently Japan's Minister of Foreign Affairs.
I am of course fully aware of Mr. Jigoku and his preeminent roles. I invited him personally to the International Forensic Science Symposium. As a representative of his country, I hear he has also played a key role in the conclusion of the Anglo-Japanese Treaty of Friendship and Navigation.
It is a great honor to be involved in the negotiations. I put my all into that treaty. I put my all into that treaty.
I keep doing his voice wrong.
It was a great honor. No. It was a great honor to be involved in negotiations. I put my all into that treaty.
Judge Jigoku, I must ask.
Well, I never fancy the young mismurdering student turning up here of all places.
You acquitted me yourself, and now I'm a practicing defense lawyer.
Yes, and full of self-importance, like your friend across the courtroom, I see.
You came here to London by invitation to this International Forensic Science Symposium, but then, without informing anyone of your plans, you took flight to France.
Took flight? I'd have to object to that turn of phrase.
Then explain yourself. What exactly were the circumstances?
Well, I was somewhat expecting this, and I'm sorry to say. I decline to comment.
What?
Leaving the country prematurely when I was an invited guest may be questionable etiquette, but my decision is unrelated to the case. I can't be bound to testify.
Unrelated, you say?
I appreciate that a respected police inspector had been killed, for which I offer my condolences. However, by being an alien, I obviously never met the man, nor do I know the first thing about him.
He wanted Gregson dead because his messing about ended with his friend being killed, Genshin Asogi.
As such, I'm in no position to testify. It's as simple as that.
So you would run from all this?
I beg your pardon.
This case is more far-reaching than the murder of Inspector Gregson. It has ties to another murder, a case that was tried in Japan almost a year ago now. A year ago in Japan? The murder of Dr. John H. Wilson, you mean? That's right, and you, Judge Jigoku, are at the heart of both cases. The defense has evidence to prove it. Well, Ryunosuke, I see from the look in your eyes that you're resolved to carry this through to the very end, too. Let's see your evidence, then. What proof do you have that Seishiro Jigoku is involved in this case? Take that! Take that! This is a telegram detailing a communication sent between Britain and Japan approximately 1 year ago. The communication contained 4 names: K. Asogi, A. Shin, D. Gregson, and J. Wilson.
Hold it. You little... Where did you get that?
In Tokyo, from your office, Judge Jigoku.
What? How on earth did you... What's this all about? Why is my name on that list?
This list of 4 names follows a certain pattern. T. Gregson and J. Wilson are the names of victims. K. Asogi and A. Shin are the names of assassins.
No!
A year ago in Tokyo, Dr. John H. Wilson's life was taken in a Western-style restaurant in the capital. The culprit was found to be a visiting student who went by the name of Giselle Brett, but her real name was Asa Shin, a professional killer sent on a mission to kill from Great Britain. A. Shin and her victim, Dr. J. Wilson. And the murder that just took place here in London was the counterpart to that crime. An assassin sent from Japan, also a visiting student, Kazuma Asogi, whose victim was the British police inspector Tobias Gregson. K. Asogi and T. Gregson. One assassin from each country to kill a target residing in the other.
What exactly is the defense suggesting?
These 2 cases of murder, one that took place in Britain and one in Japan, were masterminded by a pair of individuals from each country as a form of assassin exchange. And the telegram that the defense has acquired is proof of this international contract to kill.
What?
The telegram was found in your office, Judge Jigoku. In other words, the mastermind in Japan was you.
Judge Jigoku? What's this all about?
And you, Kazuma, you lied. During yesterday's proceedings, you acknowledged that you'd accepted the assassination mission. The mark wasn't Judge Jigoku at all. It was T. Gregson, Detective Inspector of Scotland Yard, as shown by the name on the killing contract.
Very impressive, Ryunosuke. But actually, I didn't lie. The name of the target I was ordered to kill never passed my lips yesterday. The idea that Seishiro Jigoku was the mark came entirely from you.
You deliberately avoided saying a name?
The defense claims these 4 names indicate some sort of international assassin exchange.
Everyone in this courtroom is against me. It's pretty obvious that Strongheart has to be the mastermind in Britain. Jigoku is the mastermind in Japan, and Asogi is completely involved in the whole thing. I'm just here on my own, dude.
I'm sure I speak for all present when I say that the very idea seems utterly absurd. Well, Mr. Jigoku, what have you to say for yourself?
His silence only goes to prove his guilt. There's another very important point that this new development brings to light. There's now a distinct possibility that the scene of Inspector Gregson's actual murder was in the witness's cabin aboard the SS Grouse. Judge Jigoku, you have to testify now. To refuse would put you in contempt of court.
There's no need for quite such a vicious stir, young man. Very well then, as a parting gift to you all, I'll tell you everything I know.
It seems this Japanese gentleman has information that the court must hear about the alleged assassin exchange and the events on the night of the 31st of October. Present your formal testimony now.
As you wish, my lord.
Shit.
It's true that Kazuma Asogi was assigned the assassination mission 1 year ago now. The target was Inspector T. Gregson. That was a condition of the British study tour. However, in the end something happened that meant the young man was unable to carry out his mission. On the evening in question, a member of the crew was on duty outside my cabin at all times. If there had been a shot fired, the crewman would have heard it. So clearly, I can't be involved.
So you admitted then, that as this communication suggests, there really was an assassin exchange agreement between Britain and Japan.
A political endeavor at the highest levels. Not something I can discuss here.
To use such a worthy practice as foreign study to coerce somebody to commit murder. It's the most appalling thing I've ever heard.
Appalling? Well, it's easy to judge.
Pardon?
Asogi had a reason for taking his sword to the British inspector, you know.
What?
Which is why he accepted the mission in the first place. Isn't that right, Counsel?
Kazuma-sama? Judge Jigoku, if you are the mastermind behind this operation in Japan, then tell the court the identity of your counterpart in Britain.
I'm not obliged to divulge that information.
As I said yesterday, I've killed nobody. I freely admit that I accepted the mission, but on the night the plan was to be executed, I backed out. In short, this assassin exchange that the defense has identified is unrelated to the events of the case.
The crucial point is this. Your police inspector can't have perished aboard that steamship in Dunkirk. Because if he'd been shot in the cabin, it's inconceivable that a member of the crew wouldn't have heard it.
That's right. Gregson was killed after returning to London, in the room on Fresno Street. And the perpetrator of the crime was the Reaper, Barak van Zykes. The prosecution's accusation remains unchanged.
To think that a seemingly innocent foreign exchange program was a facade for such a Machiavellian dealing. It's a plot only a government minister and high-ranking judge, such as the witness, could hope to execute.
Well, I seem to recall that it was someone on the British side who controlled everything.
Be that as it may, it's not the place of this court to pursue this villainous assassin exchange plot. We are concerned with only the tangible events pertaining to the murder of Inspector Gregson. Is the defense clear on that point, counsel?
Yes, my lord. I'll keep that in mind as when I cross-examine the witness. Hold it! Hold it! A year ago, when Kazuma was still in Japan then.
Correct. It was the examination center. It was at the examination center for applicants for the study tour that I approached him.
He approached him and said,
Here's the reality of what happened to your father. He was falsely imprisoned, and I testified in his defense. And the men who caused that to happen were Clint Van Sykes, Barak Van Sykes, and Inspector Gregson. The three shown in this photograph.
I'll never forget it. I remember exactly what you said. You just came out and asked me forthright if I'd consider travelling to Britain
on an assassination mission.
Surely not.
I thought it was a joke at first, of course, but then it was made clear to me that if I didn't accept, I wouldn't be considered for the study tour.
So you agreed to it, just for that?
I'm not convinced.
I mean, I know how much you wanted to study in England, but assassination?
The Empire of Japan had accepted a proposal from the British Empire at the time, an agreement to send a student from each country to the others. To deepen...
I can't do that voice. Oh, I'm gonna have to make it a bit more easy.
Fucking hell. An agreement to send a student from each country to the others to deepen cultural understanding and friendship. But behind the scenes, the chosen students were to be given assassination missions. I had no choice but to accept the proposal that originated from the from my British counterpart.
Why? Why did you expose the plot there and then?
Britain acknowledges no part in these alleged misbegotten dealings. I advise you not to make spurious allegations, Foreign Minister Jigoku.
As a witness, I am bound to tell the truth, my lord. Anyway, I picked Asogi and explained the details of the plan to him.
Hold it! Hold it. Why Kazuma? Why did you pick him as the assassin?
He was the most capable of all the applicants. And in addition, I knew his desire to travel to Britain was very strong. In fact, it was almost more than a desire. It was his whole purpose in life.
Yes, as his best friend, I can certainly attest to that. The way he threw himself into his studies, the way he pursued becoming qualified as a lawyer, it was all ultimately for that one single goal of being accepted on a study tour to Britain. And of course, we know the reason behind that. He was determined to find out for himself the truth about his father, Genshin Asogi.
There's nothing I wouldn't have done to get here. Be that agreeing to assume the role of an assassin, or betraying people's trust.
Well, you certainly did a fine job of betraying mine, Asogi.
But why was Inspector Gregson the target?
I have no idea. Those were the orders from Britain. I was in no position to question.
You have no idea? Really? I find that hard to believe.
Oh, do you?
Judge Jigoku was once a visiting student here in Britain himself, of course. Perhaps he has some connection with Inspector Gregson from that time.
The defense really ought to catch up.
With what?
With the fact that the assassin exchange has absolutely nothing to do with the case under scrutiny here. Yes, I've already admitted to recruiting Asogi.
Hold it! Hold it! I presume you're referring to the incident that occurred during Kazuma's passage to Britain in January. The awful tragedy that took place on the steamship.
Word arrived at the ministry some 2 weeks after the ship's departure from our shores. The visiting student had been killed, but his body had somehow gone missing in Hong Kong. The news was wired from me to me from a detective I'd placed on the ship to accompany the assassin.
Obviously, Kazuma didn't actually die at all, but he did lose his memory, including all details about his special mission.
Did you not consider dispatching another assassin at that point?
That wasn't possible, simply because
That black-clad young student over there had already put himself forward as Asogi's replacement.
Thanks to Sholmes.
And there was no way to stop him from reaching Britain.
Ah,
My hands were completely tied.
so Mr. Sholmes' strategy worked perfectly. Yes, he predicted everything would happen. Months later, my memory returned, but I'd never intended to go through with the assassination mission anyway.
So you were playing me right from the outset, were you? Is that it?
I'd sooner be guilty of that crime than the crime of taking someone else's life. I was prepared to do whatever I had to in order to get myself here to Britain.
This line of questioning has gone on long enough. All the court should be concerned about in the testimony given by this witness are details relating to his relationship with Inspector Gregson and the victim's murder.
In that case, as I've already made perfectly clear, I had no connection to the man or his death.
And you have some means of substantiating this plea.
Hold it! Outside your cabin in the first-class area of the SS Grouse, you mean?
Yes, that's right. Not least because there was a murder of a student passenger earlier in the year, I imagine. The liner operators have taken to posting a crewman outside every first-class cabin door.
I can confirm the presence of the crewman guard myself. What do you mean? Because I accompanied Inspector Gregson to Dunkirk that night. I witnessed it with my own eyes. There was a well-built crewman standing guard directly in front of the door to the witness's cabin. Does Casimir really think Van Zykes killed Gregson? There's no way. He knows it was this dude, right? He knows it was Seishiro. It must be Seishiro, obviously. Right? Right, Shutakumi? There was a well-built crewman standing guard directly in front of the door to the witness's cabin.
At that particular time, of course, I'd gone to the ship's dining room for dinner.
The inspector and I asked the crewman to allow us into the cabin while we waited for Judge Jigoku's return. I suppose Inspector Gregson was there in his capacity as the Reaper. He was intending to take the witness's life. Exactly. As I've said numerous times now, I had no intention of killing anyone. So the crewman let two potential assassins into the cabin he was supposed to be guarding. Not the most convincing of sentries, really. In truth, those were my thoughts too. But anyway, I stayed to talk with Inspector Gregson for a short while. And then I left him there and made my way off the ship alone. Was the guard still at the door when you went? Yes. He glared at me as I walked past.
You see, that proves it. If there had been a shot fired, the crewman would have heard it. So clearly I can't be involved.
Hold it! Hold it. The crewman who was standing directly outside your cabin door, you mean?
That's right. A muscular man with a permanent grim expression on his face. He didn't want to move from that spot. To be honest, I thought he was a miserable fellow. As it happens, he's the vital witness now.
There's no doubt that Gregson was killed by a gunshot. And it's inconceivable that a crewman standing just outside the cabin door wouldn't have heard that. But wait, what about the ship's enormous steam engines? The noise of them could have drowned out the sound of the gun being fired.
Sadly, young judicial assistant, that won't wash.
Oh,
You will recall that my cabin was in the first-class area of the ship, which is also, of course, the quietest. Don't imagine for a moment that it's anything like the steerage where the judicial assistants go.
I didn't mean... But a hole like that made by a bullet was found in your cabin, Judge Jigoku. That's compelling evidence that a gun was fired in there. What's that? A bullet hole?
Oh yes, you're talking about what the detective uncovered in the wall yesterday, I presume. That was obviously a rotten panel, eaten out by the woodworm. No doubt he didn't actually find a bullet.
That's the hole in this argument.
Sadly, I was unable to arrange for the crewman to be brought back to Britain with me. But obviously, if a gun had been fired in my cabin on the night in question, as the defense implies, I would have been arrested on the spot, and I would have never made it to Britain in the first place.
Very true. The witness's logic is sound, since no gunshot was heard from the witness's cabin on the night in question. We must assume that the witness is telling the truth.
I'm so glad you've seen sense, my lord.
I know Chasm has already admitted to taking on this incredible assassination plot, but even so, hearing it confirmed by somebody else is still a real shock. It's unforgivable. Using Kazuma-sama's feelings to manipulate him into agreeing to such a despicable plan. But I think Kazuma manipulated Judge Jigoku too. He completely double-crossed him. Oh dear. It's hard not to see that as a stroke of brilliance on Kazuma-sama's part. One way or another though, Gregson ended up dead. I really think that the murder must have happened aboard that steamship. So you mean? Judge Jigoku must be lying. I know I shouldn't let my emotions cloud my judgment. But you must destroy him, Mr. Naruhodo.
Having the judge be the culprit is a new thing. Like, that is brand new. Nobody's ever done that before. Well, none of the Ace Attorney games have.
Objection! Objection! Yes, as the court has heard, there was a crewman posted outside Judge Jigoku's cabin. However, we can be sure that, contrary to the witness's claim, the guard wasn't there at all times. The guard wasn't there at all times. What? I have here a notice of a particular event that was scheduled to take place aboard the steamship on the 31st.
What? Where did you get that?
It's evidence gathered by Mr. Herlock Sholmes. You were acquainted yesterday, if you remember.
Herlock Sholmes again.
According to this itinerary, after leaving the port of Dunkirk at exactly 10 PM, and for a period of 20 minutes, all crewmen of the SS Grouse were to gather on deck for an evacuation drill. All crewmen were away from their posts! And during that 20-minute interval, of course, any gunshots emanating from your cabin would have been heard by no one. In summary, Judge Jigoku, you had ample opportunity to commit the crime.
Objection!
Objection! A 20-minute window of opportunity? That's an excellent find, Ryunosuke. But it amounts to nothing. Why? Because the witness clearly stated in his testimony that no incident occurred in his cabin. Unless you have some decisive evidence that can show his testimony to be false. Your accusation is nothing more than conjecture.
Very true. Well, counsel.
Inspector Gregson was killed in Judge Jigoku's cabin that night. I'm certain of it. Because the defense has the evidence to prove it.
You will present the evidence. For the defense at once, counsel. What proof do you have that the victim's life was taken in Jigoku's cabin on the 31st?
Bam, 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 bam. Take that! Judge Jigoku, this was found in your cabin yesterday.
What is that? The crown of a pocket watch.
A pocket watch.
And if you will observe, the victim's pocket watch, which we know he treasured, is missing precisely that part.
It can't be.
Moreover, this crown is a perfect fit on the spindle protruding from the victim's watch. Now, the fact that this was retrieved from Judge Jigoku's cabin tells us that the victim's watch almost certainly broke there. He's going to say that it landed in his trunk, but that still places him by his... In other words, the victim was killed on the 31st during the 20-minute evacuation drill. In the cabin occupied by you, Judge Jigoku.
Well, you're razor sharp, aren't you, you young murderer?
Objection!
Objection! Expertly maneuvered, Ryunosuke. And your argument sounds entirely plausible. At first. But rather like this pocket watch. It's full of cracks. What? And I believe Judge Jigoku feels the same way.
I was wrong to acquit you earlier in the year.
Sorry.
If I'd known it would result in anyone having to listen to this drivel, I would have declared you guilty just to spare the world your ridiculous bombast.
I think it's clear that the witness will have to give further testimony.
When you hear what actually happened in my cabin that night, you'll notice the pitfall into which you've stumbled.
Prior to your renewed testimony, I would like to clarify one point. The fact that this part of the victim's watch was discovered in your cabin means that you acknowledge he was there, I presume.
Yes, I do.
Very well then. You may proceed to give your formal testimony about what exactly happened in your cabin aboard the ship on the evening of the 31st of October.
Of course. As a man of the law, I have no intention of obstructing justice. I had a guest waiting for me when I returned to my cabin after finishing my evening meal in the dining room. When I walked through the door, a mustachioed Englishman was there, foolishly waving a gun at me. I soon took care of him with a Nippon Sail throw, though. He couldn't wait to run after that. I imagine his watch was broken when I threw him over my shoulder. It has nothing to do with his murder. The inspector was clearly killed, having returned to Britain, because his body was found in London.
Ippon Seoi.
A common judicial martial arts technique in my country. I was careful not to use it too much force, but the man obviously landed too heavily for his watch to take.
So, Ryunosuke Naruhodo, I imagine you can see the flaw in your logic now, can't you? What? The fact that the pocket watch was broken in the witness's cabin is no way proves that the victim's murder took place there.
I've no doubt the inspector intended to kill me, but he didn't manage to pull the trigger.
Yes, because he was merely the tactician, not the Reaper's hand of death.
Well, the testimony appears to make perfect sense as far as I can tell.
Let me express my deep gratitude for your understanding, my lord.
Are we back to the contradiction about it saying 5 p.m? I think we are. But if this testimony holds, Judge Jigoku will be deemed to have had no involvement in the case.
Well, counsel, I really see no reason for wasting precious court time on a cross-examination.
Sorry, my lord. The defense has a right to cross-examine, and I don't intend to squander that.
You're an embarrassment to your countrymen, not knowing when you're beaten.
In that case, proceed, Mr. Naruhodo.
Stream looks good.
Is he gonna break the stand again? That would be fucking hilarious. So that's his story. Well, I suppose if you think about it, whenever you drop a teacup in the office and it breaks... Oh, I know what's we're gonna... Oh, this is simple. This is simply trivial. This is simply trivial. Wait. Oh. I thought this said that no additional injuries were found. No, okay. Are we gonna have to call Maria Gori to the stand at some point? Whenever you drop a teacup in the office and it breaks, we don't say Mr. Naruhodo must have been murdered there, do we? Is that a veiled threat about what might happen to me if I break another one? And the fact is that Inspector Gregson's body was found in the little room on Fresno Street. If he really was killed in Judge Jigoku's cabin, the body would have been moved have to be moved somehow, obviously. Transporting a dead body over a country border, that would be impossible for the majority of people. So there must have been some special circumstances that made it possible for the culprit then. Wait, what's he got in his hands? His hands are kind of weird. He's just holding them like this. Is it showing anything? I don't think so. So we're obviously eventually going to have to claim that this contained... When was this taken? The morning. Okay, so the body could have been placed there after this. That could be a vital realization, I think, Mr. Naruhodo. Hold it! Hold it. Because the so-called guard posted at your cabin door had just let your killer pass, you mean?
Apparently Gregson told the crewman he was a police inspector, which was the truth, of course.
He wouldn't have had his identification with him, though.
He had his trench coat and moustache, not to mention the bag of chips. I imagine the crewman was convinced.
The man accompanying him would have had 2 swords slung around his waist. You mean me? Who else?
Yes, that's true. You would have hoped the sight of a few swords might have set alarm bells in the guard's head.
The point is, I left the cabin before its occupant returned, and I immediately disembarked the ship.
Certainly, and all I can tell you is that only the inspector was waiting for me when I arrived back at my cabin.
And you entered without any inkling of suspicion.
That's right, none whatsoever.
Hold it! Hold it. Obviously, you're talking about Inspector Gregson.
Yes, though at the time, I didn't know the man's name. And there was no time for introductions. I value my life over manners.
By which you mean that the inspector was there to assassinate you, I suppose?
That was certainly the impression given by the gun pointing in my direction. But I'd never seen the muzzle of a revolver shake about all so much in my life. Anyone would think the man had never shot somebody before.
Believe it or not, most of us haven't.
Anyway, there was no time to call for the help of the crewman at the door. so I dealt with the man myself.
So now I heard it was saying about the whole moving of the body, which has to do with Jigoku's giant luggage. And the other weirdness is the 5 PM.
Hold it!
Hold it! Even though the man had a gun? That was a very brave move, wasn't it?
My Ponseo is far faster than a bullet, I can assure you.
But surely all that commotion caused the crewman to come in, didn't it?
Hmm? Yes, of course. He burst in immediately without knocking. The inspector hurled himself at the stocky fellow, and just managed to slip past him and make his escape.
The outstanding guard does it again.
Luckily, there aren't as many situations I can't get out of using a quick Ponseo throw.
Hold it! Hold it! The crown snapped off and the glass covering the face of the watch was cracked.
Preferable to the man's head being pulled off or his spine cracking, wouldn't you say?
Not that the man was spared for long. A bullet to the chest soon saw to that. But the point is, the broken pocket watch doesn't prove that a murder took place.
Absolutely not. All the watch proves is the power of my jujutsu throw.
Whatever you say, it doesn't quite ring true that no shot was fired in that cabin. Because there was an obvious bullet hole in the wall.
What are you talking about?
Hmm?
That's what the star of your lowbrow detective stories told you, isn't it? Is it? Well, I don't care for such fiction. Haven't you worked it out yet, you little stripling? No murder took place in my cabin.
Hold it! But there's no evidence that proves the victim ever returned to London alive.
Just take a moment to think that idea of yours through now, stripling.
What?
If the inspector was killed on the steamship in France, how on earth could he have got back to Britain? When people die, their bodies remain at that same spot. It's a devil of a thing.
Well, then, obviously the culprit must have moved the body.
Oh, exactly. Carrying a corpse off a ship in your arms would raise a few eyebrows at least, don't you think?
Well, yes, that's true, but...
All passenger luggage is inspected when it is unloaded from arriving vessels, and I would like to think that the border police would query a corpse of an English gentleman as hand luggage.
If the murder had taken place aboard the ship, you would imagine the body would have been disposed of at sea. There would be no sense in risking being caught by attempting to transport the body back to Britain. That's killed that idea then. But perhaps not. Mr. Sato? We've heard that the first-class passengers were under constant scrutiny by the crewmen posted to guard them, which would mean that the culprit had no opportunity to dispose of the body in the sea. Yes, that's true. So transporting the body to Britain may have been the only viable alternative.
Dear me, you really are new to this, aren't you? I thought I'd been perfectly clear, but it seems I'm going to have to explain it in words you can understand. I think I ought to alter my testimony, with your consent, of course, my lord.
I have no objection. State your amended testimony now.
There's no possible way I could have transported the victim's corpse back to Britain.
Hold it! There's an idea.
Think about it, stripling. All passengers and crew disembarked at the same time and passed through the same checks at the border.
Oh, his case wasn't subject to checks, and he made an effort to say that when we were with, in the hotel.
The symposium guests were then driven straight to the hotel in carriages organized by the ministry.
And we met you as soon as you arrived at the hotel.
So you did. Well then, remind me, did I have a corpse over my shoulder at the time?
What? No.
So we're in agreement then. I couldn't possibly have brought the inspector's body back to Britain. Unless, of course, they've developed some clever device these days to instantly move things from A to B.
Funny you should say that. Professor Hairbrain's invention didn't actually work, if you remember, Mr. Naruhodo. Yes, of course.
The defense has become unusually quiet, I notice.
Yes, because there's really nothing more to say.
Objection! There's no possible way you could move Inspector Gregson's body, you say? I would say the opposite is true.
And what's that supposed to mean?
Far from being impossible for you to do, the transporting of Inspector Gregson's body back to Britain is something only you could do.
What are you talking about, Ryunosuke?
As well as being a judge, Mr. Jigoku is also Japan's Minister of Foreign Affairs. Which means he's exempt from having his luggage searched when he enters the country. We learned that when we first met you upon your arrival in London.
Well, all those passport checks and luggage searches at the border took quite a lot of time. I must say, I'm very envious of your ministerial status. You didn't have to go through any of that, did you?
Ah, I knew you were jealous.
I presume you recall this, Judge Jigoku. It's a photograph we took in the foyer of the hotel to mark the occasion. As the court will note, you have with you your large travel trunk. Large enough, in fact, to have a corpse inside. Mr. Naruhodo, surely you're not suggesting... I'm afraid I am, yes. 3 days ago, when we were chatting innocently with the new arrivals from Japan in the hotel. The body of Inspector Gregson was just meters away from us, inside Judge Jigoku's trunk.
Order, order, order in court. I'm skeptical, counsel, that a grown man's body could fit inside even the largest travel trunk.
It could. Because I happen to know that the witness himself, a man of considerable size, fits inside the trunk. And verifying that would be extremely simple, wouldn't it, Judge Jigoku? But inside his trunk? How horrifying. And after we'd spoken with you at the Great Waterloo Hotel, you had the opportunity to visit the apparent scene on Fresno Street. Taking your trunk with you in a cab to deposit the inspector's body.
I don't have to listen to all this nonsense.
Dr. Gori, the coroner who examined the body, has confirmed the possibility. She's acknowledged there are signs that steps may have been taken to disguise the true time of death. The onset of the body's decomposition could have been delayed by storing it in a refrigerator.
Counsel, as I remember explaining yesterday, refrigerators of the requisite size are few and far between.
Yes, I'm sure they are, but one place they're certainly found is on large ocean liners. Such ships are equipped with electrically refrigerated cold rooms to keep food fresh on their long sea voyages. And the SS Grouse is no exception. Professor Mikotoba told me about it only yesterday. Well, Judge Jigoku? However much you prolong this debate, you can't eliminate the truth. All the evidence points to you being the killer.
Well, this is all very heartening. I can see that it was a wise move, letting Asogi and you embark on this study tour.
What are you talking about now?
Logical reasoning, of course. All court proceedings will be built on logical reasoning in the new century. And I can see that you've both laid firm foundations for that already.
Judge Jigoku, please stop diverting attention from the issue at hand. The defense has made an accusation against you. How do you respond?
Respond? There's really no need for me to respond, is there?
Why ever not?
Because before you can even begin to answer the question of when the victim was killed, you must first establish one key fact. Where was the victim killed? It's quite logical.
The actual scene of the crime. The prosecution's stance is unaltered. The killing took place on Fresno Street when the gunshot was heard. As the accused, Barak Van Zykes, shot the victim at point-blank range.
Since no tangible evidence exists to disprove the prosecution's claim at this time, the defense's deduction amounts to little more than an elaborate fairy tale.
I'm afraid that's how the logical reasoning the British are known for really works, young Stripling.
The victim was shot in that little room on Fresno Street and died instantly. I'm afraid it's the prosecution's claim that's the only fairy tale here. How can you say that? Quite simply, because that claim directly contradicts a certain piece of evidence in our possession.
Very tantalizing, counsel. I think you had better explain yourself to the court, don't you?
Prosecution claims that Inspector Gregson died instantly when he was shot at the scene on Fresno Street. But this evidence clearly contradicts that claim. It has to be something that we couldn't have done on the day one, right? Otherwise, we'd have done it on day one. That's my initial thinking. If he was, the time of death wouldn't be indeterminate. It would have been easy to determine the time of death. I think it's this, but I will double check everything else. Blood on the trunk? Not necessarily. I mean, it's an idea. But I think it's the autopsy report. It wouldn't be indeterminate if not. Take that! Take that!
The Japanese really are a curious breed. To proffer an argument with such conviction, only to present such nonsensical evidence.
Perhaps my Japanese friend's inexplicable thinking is why people talk of the mystique of the East. In case you hadn't noticed, I'm not the only Japanese around here. Do you even have a mirror?
The court is not interested in the mystique of anything. You will be penalized accordingly.
Was the victim killed in the room on Fresno Street, or was he moved there after his death? There's one piece of evidence we have that shows the answer to that question, surprisingly clearly. Perhaps you should try to present the correct one this time then, Mr. Naruhodo. Are you gonna try again, or can't you hold your hand steady enough to point it out? The Prosecution claims there's one piece of evidence we have that shows the answer to that question surprisingly clearly. Prosecution claims that Inspector Gregson died instantly when he was shot at the scene on Fresno Street. But this evidence clearly contradicts that claim. Is it his photo? Could it be this photo? If it was this photo, why didn't we present it on the first day? Okay, I'm gonna go through one by one. I'm gonna do this properly. I'm not gonna piss about. No, 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 no. So this is the type of revolver that's standard issue for members of the judiciary then? Yes, and when I asked about whether records are kept about who they're issued to, I was told that for the past 5 years, they've been engraved with a unique serial number. Oh, but as far as I can tell, there's nothing like that on this gun, which tells us that it must have been issued longer ago than that. Can we not check how many bullets are left in the bloody chamber? Are we really not allowed to do that? It's not the autopsy report, we did that. Prosecution claims that Inspector Gregson died instantly when he was shot at the scene on Fresno Street. But this evidence clearly contradicts that claim. Something we've learned, either it's a new piece of evidence that we haven't really thought about very much, or it's something which we had before, but we now interpret differently because we've learned more stuff. Is it the dried blood? Why is it still... the tip of Kalama? So this is how it was broken. Kalama's swordsmanship is second to none. I can't believe he'd misjudge it like that. Clearly, it wasn't in his right mind. He didn't have full control of the power in his stroke. Too distracted by malicious thoughts, perhaps. Well, that wouldn't be surprising. After all, he was on an assassination mission. trunk is really the only thing I can actually think of. Or this? No. He was captured. He couldn't have gotten it back. The only thing I can think of is it has blood on it.
Take that!
Take that! Fuck. Okay, it's not the autopsy report, and it's not that. I don't want to lose. Is it really that hard? Or am I just bad? Let's rule everything out. Let's think about it. The prosecution claims... maybe I said it earlier, but just didn't remember. The prosecution's current theory is that Gregson went on this trip, got through over in the jiu-jitsu slam, broke his pocket watch, then returned to Britain. Why? Like, just running off back to Britain, right? That's so weird. Maybe that point is suspicious, but let's say somehow the prosecution's case is fine there, and he gets back to Britain. Following this, he thinks he's failed the Reaper's mission. Goes to the room, the Fresno Street room, to find died instantly. Maybe it's the died instantly part. It's not the within 1 week thing, that's not important. I actually don't know what it is. I'm stuck. I'm actually stuck. I'm actually really stuck here. The prosecution claims that he died instantly when he was shot in Fresno Street. Not the armband. It's not the Red-Headed League. There's no... I mean, it's circled in red ink, and there was a mention of red ink elsewhere, but that's not important. A photograph of Mr. Vigil.
Not relevant. This has the corner cut off. Not relevant. Not relevant. I can't look at the, like, back of it or anything. Could it be this? I've always wondered what the underside of a hairpiece looks like. That doesn't surprise me at all, Mr. Naruhodo. You always want to see what lies beneath, don't you? I'm not sure that's quite how I'd put it. You must have to use lots of birdlime to keep it in place on your head. So it doesn't get blown off in a gust of wind, I mean. That might be a little inconvenient when you wanted to take it up again, don't you think? I'm not missing anything here. We've not used this at all. Zero. So the candle was used as a sort of timer device to set off the firecrackers. That's a really ingenious idea. Obviously, it's a shame it was used for such a wicked purpose. I wonder if there aren't some more positive uses for a timer device such as that. Ah, I have the perfect application. It would be a wonderful way of waking you in the mornings, Mr. Naruhodo. I think I'd prefer that you continue to wake me in person, if it's all the same to you. I just invented the alarm clock. Wow. The helmet of this charming policeman appears to be a little worse for wear. I'm not convinced about the charming part, but yes, you're right. The head part looks like it's been fairly heavily manhandled. Okay, this is extremely tepid. If Gregson was shot and died instantly, why would this have been out of his pocket when... What's the point of the crown? What is the point of the crown? I mean, it gets turned around and around every day. I hope it doesn't fall off in the end. That would be iconic. So this is the little key used to wind the inspector's pocket watch. I can't understand it. I can't understand it at all. Oh, what's this? Mr. Naruhodo, look! Oh yes, it's a smudge of some kind. In fact, it looks just like a handprint. And the color, that's blood, isn't it? Oh dear, how disturbing. Have you had an idea, Mr. Naruhodo? You're staring at the end of a string of fireworks. Sorry, it's just that it's the Venus Special. I was wondering, what 600 pence worth of fireworks sound like? Shall we find out? What? But she said it could blow up the courtroom. Oh, right. That was a fairly sizable bang. My ears are still ringing, Mr. Naruhodo. It sounded almost exactly like... tightly curled up.
a small part of Inspector Bacon's pocket watch was found inside Judge Shigoku's trunk. Yes, I believe that could be very significant indeed. And, what do you call it again? Crown. A pocket watch is quite useless without it. Yes, that's right. Crown. A very grand name for such a tiny part. That's exactly what you said the last time we discussed it, Mr. Naruhodo. Hang on. Let me look at what a crown does. Pocket watch crown purpose. The most common functions of a watch crown are to allow you to change the time, to change the date, to wind the watch, and to stop the watch. Ah, I'm so lost. I think I might end up losing here because there's just a lot of things that I think might work, and there's nothing that I think will surely work. Let me read. There's one piece of evidence we have that shows the answer to that question surprisingly clearly. Surprisingly clearly. As opposed to obscurely. I don't see it there. I've already tried this, so don't even bother. The only way it would work is if there's a bit of it that I haven't examined and it's going to change the... Oh, it was issued. I'm gonna lose, dude. I don't know what it is. I tried the autopsy report. That didn't work. I tried the trunk. That doesn't work. Let's investigate this again. Not for any particular reason. No blood, no nothing weird. I swear, like, it's so dumb that there's no blood dripping down him. Shot in the chest. In the chest, look. Where's the blood? Where is the blood? I'm thinking, okay, let's try and narrow it down. Let's try and narrow it down to what's plausible. Plausible? Plausible. So 1, 2, plausible. 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 I don't think this is plausible.
No. No. Plausible. That's 5 now pieces of plausible evidence. Plausible, 6. I'm gonna go ahead and say plausible 7 because I don't think it's plausible. Okay, plausible 6. So 6 plausible. Not this. Plausible 7. Wouldn't he have gotten rid of his passport if he returned? There's 7 things it could be. Right, I've pointed out 7 things it could be. Now let's see if I can process of elimination. I don't think it's this. The only argument I can think of for the passport is Gregson would have threw away the passport when he returned, which isn't really true, is it? It was in his trunk. His you know, what? This is so weird as well. I don't think this is plausible, because we've already said about how the Red-Headed League men had Mr. Vigil, and that there was no way the inspector could get his ID back. And at no point in the prosecution's story does the inspector need his ID with him, right? Except to get into the cabin, which we said he just tricked the guard somehow. In this story, in the prosecution story, what of the 5 PM? Jigoku throws him at like 10 PM. But he would have already wound it up that evening, because he winds it up in the evening, not like 10 PM, right? That's one thing that I think seems quite plausible. So far, I think the Gregson's pocket watch is the best thing we have. Photograph of the victim. As much as I find, personally, this photo really suspicious and really weird, that there's no blurred and it just looks kind of odd, as much as I think that, if it was odd, it would have been able to have been brought up in day 1. I don't see how could anything we've learned change how we interpret this photo? Why was there no sign of him being jujutsu thrown? Why hasn't he got his feet? No, that's silly. Yeah, I don't see any obvious thing that's wrong with the photo. The gun, there's nothing wrong with the gun, right? My little idea of he died instantly, so how did this policeman figurine end up like in the middle of the room? Found at the scene of the crime on Fresno Street. Which, I don't see it personally. And again, I don't really see it. I want to think it's the pocket watch, but it's probably wrong. Because if it was right, I would feel very confident, wouldn't I? You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to re-examine all 3 of the pocket watch components. So a smaller part was found in Judge Jigoku's trunk. Yes, I believe that could be very significant. And what do you call it again? The crown. A pocket watch is quite useless without it. Yes, that's right. The crown. What a very grand name. That's exactly what you said the last time we discussed it. So this is where the little policeman, running it up every single day for 10 years without fail. Glass over the face really is badly cracked. Look. What a shame when the inspector clearly looked after it so carefully. Imagine Mr. Sholmes could repair it. Are we not able to reinterpret the meaning of this thing? So this little part of Inspector Greggson's pocket watch was found inside Judge Jigoku's trunk. That's right, which it cannot possibly be denied as extremely significant. What do you call it again? The small round piece of the watch. The crown. A pocket watch is quite useless without it. Yes, that's right, the crown. Very grand name for such a tiny part. That's exactly what you said the last time we discussed it. Mr. Naruhodo. I've got to try it, because I can't... Take that! Take that! Right. Fuck. I'm gonna lose, dude. I'm on 2 lives, by the way. I always forget that you can't see the last 4 lives because of the camera. I'm on 2 lives. I hate this so much. I am literally just guessing at this point. Because I'm just bad. It's wrong. This is so obviously wrong. So obviously wrong. We would have spoke about it in day 1 if this was wrong. Ah, fuck off. I lose, dude.
Take that!
Oh no. Oh no. Time to find out why my bullshit reason that this is wrong isn't right. So I said that this couldn't be the answer because we would have used it on day one. What the fuck do we know now that changes anything?
A photograph of the victim in the very location you claim he wasn't killed.
Yes, but the point is the posture of the body itself. If you died standing up, right, you're standing up, you get a shot, you could slump anyway. Whereas if you took it out of the trunk and placed it, yes, it would be like that. Whereas if you were shot and killed, is this the argument that if you were shot and killed, it was a high caliber gun, so it would have knocked him for 6. Like, you know, he would have been knocked back. Hopefully my demonstration isn't too absurd. Man. Okay. Yes, but the point is the posture of the body itself. We could have brought this up day one. If Inspector Gregson had been shot there in that room, it's out of the question that his body would have been curled up in a ball like that.
Objection. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but your logic is flawed. He could easily have adopted that fetal position due to the pain of the shot, which subsequently proved fatal.
Objection! Objection! I'm sorry to disappoint you, Judge Jigoku, but it's your logic that's flawed.
What?
According to this autopsy report, the victim died instantly. He would have felt no pain, much less have been able to draw himself into that position.
Ugh.
We literally could have pointed this out in testimony 1 of day 1. We're like, what the fuck? Which begs the question of why the victim's body is curled up in that way. Though the answer should be abundantly clear by now.
You're suggesting?
The inspector's body took on that posture ahead of its arrival on Fresno Street, before it was coldly turned out on the floor, from the inside of a large travel trunk. No! You're quite right. The shape of the body, it looks exactly as if it had been kept in a confined space. Rigor mortis, I fucking forgot about rigor mortis. Judge Jigoku, present your trunk for examination. I believe it's very possible that it will contain traces of the victim's blood.
Ugh. Present my trunk. I refuse.
What? On what grounds?
I'm the Minister of Foreign Affairs from the Empire of Japan. I shouldn't have to put up with this treatment just because of some stripling's baseless accusations.
In other words, Judge Jigoku, there is blood in your trunk.
I decline to answer that. As the Minister of Foreign Affairs, I have privileges that...
Objection! At this moment, you're not a government minister. You are a witness in a trial to Britain's highest court. I don't care who you are or what your status outside this courtroom might be, but you will not withhold this information. Nothing is more important than the truth.
Order, order in court. Well, Mr. Jigoku, what's it to be?
You can't be serious! You did it!
Have you no shame at all, Kazuma Hosogi?
What?
Very well, I admit it. I did bring the inspector's body into the country. Inside my trunk, exactly as postulated by the defense.
What? You!
Dear God, outrageous!
So it was you! You admit to Inspector Gregson's
No, I admit nothing more than what I've said. Of killing the man, I certainly have no recollection.
What on earth is that cryptic statement supposed to mean?
I merely disposed of the inspector's body, which was left in my cabin, in order to avoid unwanted attention. As the judicial assistant over there pointed out, I had no chance to throw it in the ocean. So, I decided my only option was to bring it to Britain with me and dispose of it somewhere else.
You can't still deny it. If you didn't do it, then who on earth did kill the man?
As you know, there was one other person in my cabin that night. He had the opportunity. And moreover, he'd already accepted a mission to take the inspector's life.
Oh,
That's right. Who else could it have been? It was you, Kazuma Asogi.
you. I never thought you'd stoop to this, Seishiro Jigoku.
You've taken the words straight out of my mouth, Prosecutor Kazuma Asogi. You thought by leaving the body in my cabin, you could pin the crime on me, did you?
Well, the prosecution counsel has already admitted to visiting the witness's cabin on the night in question.
Yes, on assassination mission. On an assassination mission, no less.
You wouldn't.
So, what do you make of that, young stripling? You've heard my testimony now, and that's all I have to say on the matter. I'll admit to nothing more.
I don't believe this.
Counsel for the defense, what is your position now? The court awaits your response to the witness's assertion. The assertion that on the night in question, the victim's assailant was in fact Mr. Kazuma Asogi.
This isn't the dead end it seems to be. The answer's right in front of me. It comes down to Jigoku or Kazuma. Both of them had the opportunity to kill Gregson, but only one of them did it. And I'm just a step away from proving who. Very well, the defense is ready to respond to the assertion put forward by Judge Jigoku. The idea that the victim's murder could have been committed by Prosecutor Asogi is... it's impossible. One, he didn't have the gun, he would have used his sword. And two, he didn't have the gun, he only had his... it's impossible. Judge Jigoku, let me remind you of something you said only a few minutes ago. You know what, I'm going to see what the wrong answer sounds like. Well, it is possible, my lord. Judge Jigoku, let me remind you of something you said only a few minutes ago. Is that a branching path? Well, I choose this one first, and I did that intentionally. But I might go back and see what happens to the other one. Just in case it is an actual different path. Judge Jigoku, let me remind you of something you said only a few minutes ago. You claimed that logical reasoning is the future of the judicial process.
It is, no question.
Well, logical reasoning can prove something here. Namely, that it would have been impossible for Prosecutor Asogi to commit the crime.
What?
The court will here only accept an argument that is supported by compelling evidence. So present what you have, counsel. What proof is there that allegedly demonstrates the impossibility of Prosecutor Asogi's involvement?
Is it the sword? You would have killed him with his sword, dude. Obviously. Or would he? Oh, fuck, I don't know. Bastard. So Jigoku's claim is that Asogi killed him, he returned to the room, then Jigoku put him in his trunk. Where's the bullet? Nah, that's not good enough. I actually don't know the answer, dude. I'm so fucking stuffed. I actually don't know the answer, dude. Fuck. This is hard as nails. I want to say... the sword. I really want to say the sword. I'm saying the sword. Fuck it. It's wrong, but... Take that! Take that! You're making the evidence weep here, Morinosuke Naruhodo. Sorry? Every piece of evidence has a role to play in arriving at the truth. They're not playthings you can toss around the courtroom for entertainment. Never mind the evidence. You're about to make me weep, Mr. Naruhodo. Oh no, I can't upset Susato-san, or I'll end up being upset too. We know a member of the crew was on sentry duty outside the first class cabins nearly all the time, so as long as the guard was there, it would have been impossible to fire a shot without it being heard. And that very much narrows down when the crime could have been committed.
The court will only accept an argument that is supported by compelling evidence. So present what you have, counsel.
Proof that Asogi wasn't there at 10 p.m. It's about the time. It's about the time. I actually just lose. I fucking lose, dude. Ah, fuck it, I'm just gonna lose.
Take that!
Take that. This is the itinerary for crew members of the SS Grouse, my lord. This is conclusive proof.
An itinerary? How does that prove anything?
Judge Jigoku, the moment you acknowledge that you found the victim's body in your cabin, this itinerary suddenly became much more significant.
What? Why?
On the night in question, as always, a crewman sentry was on guard outside your cabin door. As long as he was there, nobody could have fired a shot inside the cabin.
Survived on one life, dude. Absolutely. Because it's inconceivable that the guard wouldn't have heard it and come to investigate.
So that tells us that the crime must have taken place when the guard was elsewhere. And that narrows it down to the 20 minutes just after 10 o'clock, as indicated on the itinerary.
Yes, I see no flaw in your reasoning so far.
But the crucial point is this. When the evacuation drill took place, the steamship had already put to sea from the port of Dunkirk. I didn't realize that. Now, clearly the murder could only have been committed by somebody who was aboard the vessel at the time. But Prosecutor Kosogi stated in yesterday's proceedings,
I didn't come to Great Britain to take anyone's life, so I left Gregson and disembarked the ship. I spent that night at a boarding house in town, and returned to England the following morning.
which I'm sure the court will agree is conclusive proof. But Kazuma Asogi couldn't possibly have carried out the killing.
Hold it. No, absolutely not. I don't accept that at all.
What do you mean?
The boy is just saying that to exonerate himself. We can't trust that. We can't trust that he really disembarked the vessel. Obviously, after he left my cabin, he hid himself somewhere nearby on the ship. Just waiting for his chance to come back and...
Objection! No, that's out of the question. Isn't it, Kazuma?
As the defense rightly recalls, I disembarked the vessel and spent the night in a boarding house in Dunkirk. As I said yesterday, I signed my name in the accommodations register book. And it's all extremely easy to verify, and undeniable proof.
No,
There's no escape this time. You can forget that you're a judge or a government minister. It's time you gave the court an honest answer, as a common man. You killed Inspector Tobias Gregson and transported his corpse back to Britain. Then you dumped the body in the room on Fresno Street and made it look as if the murder had happened there. That's what really happened, isn't it, Seishiro Jigoku?
it was that damn trial 10 years ago. That's when this all began. Back now, my fate was decided that day. I was doomed already. It's over, my life. It's over.
A British assassin to eliminate a professor in Japan, a Japanese assassin to eliminate a detective in Britain. Both assassins will use diplomatic immunity to evade conviction and return safely to their homelands. Oh, that was him.
The assassin exchange request arrived from Britain about 1 year ago. Though it was hardly a request, it was a demand.
And for that, you decided to recruit Mr. Asogi. But things didn't go
according to plan.
but things didn't go according to the plan. Your chosen assassin never made it to Britain. And you found yourself unable to dispatch a replacement. Because I was already on my way to Britain at that time in Kazuma's place.
And that left me with only one option for carrying out my obligation. To eliminate the mark myself, personally. Of course, there was but a single opportunity for me to do that.
The International Forensic Science Symposium, I presume.
That's right. I decided it would be safest to carry out the plan before my arrival to Britain. So I enlisted the help of my British counterpart and made arrangements for a pretext that would take the inspector to Dunkirk. To lure the man in, he was given a sham mission by the Reaper.
What? The Reaper? But there's only one person who could have done that. The mastermind of the entire operation. The Reaper himself. So that means that the assassin exchange was... It was all planned by the Reaper.
I'm not at liberty to say anything about my British counterpart. Anyway, the inspector accepted the Reaper's mission and dutifully infiltrated my cabin on the steamship. But it was all a trap designed to lead him to France and his own death.
Oh, how awful.
It was past 9 o'clock when I returned to my cabin from the dining hall that evening. I didn't give him time to attack me. I choked him until he lost consciousness. But there was a guard just outside the door, so I left it at that for the time being. Even the slightest noise might have aroused suspicion, so I bided my time, waiting.
For the 20 minutes after 10 o'clock.
I had intended to finish him by strangulation, but moments before I had the chance, he suddenly came round and went for me in a reckless move. I'd received the British-issue gun 16 years earlier, being a member of the judiciary as a visiting student. I never imagined I'd have to use it for something like that.
So the revolver belongs to you, does it?
Then the victim was killed inside your cabin on the SS Grouse. Which begs the question of why you arranged for his body to be discovered in the room on Fresno Street.
The young judicial assistant over there has already answered that question. There was no way I could take the body up on deck to throw it over the side. That's precisely where all the crewmen were gathered for the evacuation drill. Though before the first-class cabin security sentries returned, I took the corpse into the refrigeration room.
And then on arriving in Dover, you sealed the body in your trunk in order to smuggle it past the border police.
I knew I needed to take steps if the police were to be convinced when the body was found in London.
In that case, you must have known. You must have had intimate details of Inspector Gregson's intended schedule.
Yes, my British counterpart sent me everything I needed to know. The inspector was due at Fresno Street at 5 o'clock that afternoon in order to meet a man by the name of Hugh Boone, from whom he would take back his police identification. I decided that man would be the perfect person to set up as the culprit.
He just admitted that his British counterpart is Van Zykes.
So I took a hackney carriage over there with the body still in my trunk.
That must have been just after we took this photograph with you at the hotel then.
Yes, I wasn't expecting a welcoming committee. I was more than a little nervous. On Fresno Street, I spotted a young girl selling little firecrackers.
Miss Venus, of course.
I conceived of the candle trick there and then. So I donned a simple disguise and approached the girl to buy enough firecrackers to replicate a gunshot.
What sort of disguise?
For some reason, the inspector had a bright red hairpiece in his own traveling case, so I put that on. Although I suspect I drew more attention to myself in that, well, than I would otherwise.
The hairpiece we found at the scene. The inspector had it ready for the Red-Headed League investigation.
I only arrived at the room at around 5:15, so I quickly placed the body on the floor, moved the notice board, and set up my little candle trick. I arranged it so the firecrackers would go off with a bang around 15 minutes later.
So that Mr. Boone, who was due to arrive at 5, would walk straight into the trap.
Except, at the last moment, I made a careless blunder.
Wait, Hugh Boone was supposed to be set up.
I made a careless blunder.
What was that? I imagine it was the bag of fish and chips. Ah,
I didn't notice that it had fallen out of his overcoat pocket when I moved the body to the refrigeration room. I put it back into his pocket the following morning, but... well, it seems that the warmth of the heated cabin had accelerated the decay of the fish. Anyway, that's everything. All the sordid details of what I did.
I've heard enough. We've arrived at the truth about the murder of one of the country's most capable and respected police inspectors. The witness will be tried in the coming days. For a crime of such vile nature, you can expect the most severe penalty.
an exchange of assassins? What a foolhardy idea. Mr. Jigoku, one last detail. Who was your counterpart in Britain? Who was the mastermind behind the assassin exchange? Nothing you say now can make matters any worse for you. Just tell us.
Enough! I've already told you that I cannot say.
Even though, as things stand, you may very well never set foot in your homeland again.
What are you waiting for? Can't we get this over with now? It's finished. All of it. I'm finished.
Then, in the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I now pronounce the findings of this court. This man before us has admitted to the willful murder of Tobias Gregson. Seishiro Jigoku, it is the opinion of this court that you should be found. And may I remind all present at the British Empire, and may I remind all those present of the strict confidentiality demanded by this closed court.
Objection. It's got to be right.
Moments ago, Mr. Jigoku signed a written confession, admitting to the murder of Inspector Gregson and the subsequent conveyance of the body. In short, the defendant's innocence has therefore been established beyond doubt.
Oh, wonderful. Well done, Mr. Naruhodo. Yes, thank you. Is something wrong? I'm just a little troubled by his silence.
The true identity of the Reaper of the Bailey and this extraordinary assassin exchange. We do remain in the dark about those mysteries. However,
Insofar as the indictment brought against the defendant in this trial, we have reached a conclusion. I have every intention of pursuing both mysteries as a prosecutor. As you wish. Now, for the formal adjudication. I hereby declare the defendant, Baron Barak van Zyks.
Objection!
Objection! The prosecution calls for adjudication to be deferred. Counsel. The accused's innocence hasn't been fully established at all, and therefore it would be wrong to deliver a verdict at this time. That is the prosecution's unwavering position.
What? But Judge Jigoku has already confessed.
Nevertheless, Barak van Zyks has committed crimes for which he must be punished. Well, it would appear that you have information that the court needs to hear, Prosecutor Asogi.
Certainly, the murder of Inspector Grayson was actually carried out by Seishiro Jigoku.
But it's clear from the witness's testimony that he was coerced into complying with the plot, into this sick, merciless assassin exchange.
That may be true, but...
So what I want to know is, who coerced Jigoku? Who was pulling the strings? The victim went to France, having been ordered on a mission for the Reaper, only to be murdered. In other words, the mastermind behind the assassin exchange is someone in a position to give such an order. As we've already established, the Reaper himself. Well, certainly, that would appear to follow. The prosecution hereby formally accuses the man in the dock, Barak van Zyks, of being the Reaper of the Bailey, and furthermore, I'm gonna prove his guilt beyond all reasonable doubt.
What?
Order, order, order. The Reaper of the Bailey is a long-standing mystery, Counsel. Are you suggesting you have some new information with which to build a case?
Scotland Yard has already investigated Lord Van Zyks very thoroughly in that regard, and they found no evidence whatsoever to substantiate the claim that he is the Reaper.
Perhaps, but circumstances have now changed.
What do you mean?
It's already been established that the assassin exchange was negotiated with Jigoku by the Reaper himself, which means we now have a new line of questioning in which to identify definitively the man's identity. That is the prosecution's intention here.
I must say I'm surprised by quite how tenaciously you appear to want to besmirch my name.
You are guilty of an unforgivable crime, Lord Van Zyks, and I will bring you to justice for it, whatever it takes.
That explains Kazuma's silence before. He'll stop at nothing to finish what Lord Van Zyks unwittingly started 10 years ago. Is he going to claim that Barak Van Zyks shot Genshin?
Very well, whilst it's extremely irregular. I will on this occasion grant the prosecution further opportunity for witness testimony. The defendant will disclose any and all involvement he had with the Reaper and the assassin exchange.
I thank you, my lord, for guiding the court so wisely.
I hereby declare this court to be in session for a supplementary hearing.
Pray turn a blind eye to the discourtesy as I verify this vile and unremitting accusation. It hasn't soured the contents of my hallowed chalice.
Lord Van Zyks?
I first had to suffer the pseudonym of the Reaper 10 years ago now, and ever since that time, I've endured the weight of the implied guilt that's gone with it. So I welcome the chance to testify now and crush those allegations once and for all. Good. Then let justice decide, Lord Van Zytes. The prosecution seeks to begin building its case by calling the accused to the stand as the primary witness, in order that he may answer the accusation brought by the prosecution that he is the Reaper of the Bailey.
And what says the defense?
Putting the defendant at the witness stand can be extremely dangerous, and Kazuma-sama is so emotional at the moment, he's not thinking logically. You're right that he's not himself. But I knew it would be like this. And I came here today to determine to face him through whatever might arise. As a lawyer, and as his friend. And that's what we must do. The defense has no objection, my lord.
Very well. Defendant, you will take the witness stand and give formal testimony on the subject of your involvement with the Reaper and the assassin exchange.
As you wish, my lord.
Holy shit. How long has this stream been going? 2 hours? Only 2 hours and 52, really?
I've never taken the life of another, nor have I instructed another to kill. I've been investigating the truth behind the Reaper for years, and I was aware of Gregson's involvement. That's the reason why I went to Fresno Street that day, and how I came to discover the body. The point is, no common thread exists between myself, Gregson, and Dr. Wilson. Clearly, therefore, there's no reason to suspect me of being behind the assassin exchange.
Well, he's lied there.
So you deny all accusations by the prosecution, both that you are the Reaper of the Bailey and that you masterminded the assassin exchange.
I acknowledge that the public at large believes me to be the Reaper. However, that's a fallacy, which I alone am in a position to forswear.
Naturally, the prosecution believes the testimony just given by the accused to be untrue. Yunosuke Naruhodo. Yes? Let me ask you, why are you here? What really brings you to this courtroom? A desire to uncover the truth, even if that truth proves your client to be guilty. From all my experiences in this courtroom, I've come to realize something. The truth can't be hidden. Sooner or later, it will come out. So it's always my intention to work with my client in the pursuit of the truth. I want you to remember what you just said.
Enough dilatory chatter. Counsel for the defense, proceed to cross-examine the witness.
Yes, my lord. I know exactly what you're thinking, Kazuma. I know you're just waiting to point it out. A contradiction you've convinced lies somewhere within this man's testimony. Holy shit. I'm on one life, dude. Convincing testimony by Lord Van Zytes? Certainly, with no apparent connection between the three men, there is no way to establish a motive. Testimony seems unassailable as far as I can see. Oh dear me, what a bleak expression. I agree, there doesn't appear to be any particular link between them, at first glance. But with the inclusion of one other person, you must be overthinking it, surely. Another person, Mr. Naruhodo. I need to think back over all the information we've gleaned so far.
Alright, and I'll review my notes about the case and all the evidence in the court record. Could it be that Lord Van Zykes has something to hide after all?
Fuck. Oh, I actually like Lord Van Zykes.
Hold it!
Hold it! So you're not what the general public refer to as the infamous Reaper of the Bailey?
Exactly. Don't imagine for a moment the court will be satisfied with a one-word answer on this. I realise that.
If you're intending to comment on every sentence, this could take a while, Kazuma. Didn't you find it disturbing, though, that one by one, defendants who'd been acquitted after your unsuccessful prosecution were killed?
Let me answer that question by posing another. If one by one, defendants who'd been acquitted after your successful defence were killed, would you find that disturbing?
But disturbing? I couldn't possibly say how that would make me feel with a one-word answer like that.
Exactly.
Well, that told me.
But even though I'm not the Reaper, that doesn't mean I ignored all the hearsay.
Hold it! Hold it! You say for years. How long exactly?
Since the very first time the Reaper's influence was felt in this courtroom, 10 years ago now.
And your investigations led you somehow to Inspector Gregson, you're saying?
I didn't want to believe it.
This expression is new, almost like he's lying.
He was a personal acquaintance. We'd worked on cases together in the past.
A friend, even.
It felt like a betrayal, but I demanded permission to search his office at the Yard without his knowledge. Which is when you found his secret notebook, is it? It's when I first learnt of the location he'd noted only as grouse, and the appointment at 5 PM on the 31st. Though I didn't know the significance of those details at the time.
So now we're at the nub of the matter.
As it turns out, the significance for me personally was very unfortunate.
Hold it! Hold it! But why did you go to that specific location?
I thought that if it was the Reaper's headquarters, then by turning up there at 5 o'clock, I would catch whoever was involved red-handed. Sadly, all that was awaiting me was the Inspector's corpse.
Yes, even though it wasn't designed for you, you walked straight into the trap set by Jigoku.
Exactly. Jigoku had intended to implicate Hugh Boone, but unhappily for me, I arrived at the scene first.
Ha! A ridiculously careless blunder. Moved on to just throwing insults around, I see then, Kazuma.
Think what you will. It doesn't change the truth.
Hold it! Hold it. There is a link between you and Gregson, though.
Of course, we were close acquaintances. We'd worked on numerous cases together. I considered the man to be a mentor of sorts. He taught me a number of important lessons.
He did? Such as what?
Where to buy good fish and chips, and such like.
He trembled when he said that. Well, that was convincing.
Dr. Wilson was a coroner, of course, but that was some time in the past. And in any case, I understand it was several years ago now that he was invited to work at a Japanese university.
That's right. He was a visiting professor at the Imperial Yumai University in Tokyo.
It should be unambiguously clear, then, that no link exists between myself and him. In other words, I have no motive for sending some assassin across the oceans to kill the man.
Sounds plausible enough, and I want to believe it. Something about this just doesn't quite sit right with me.
Clearly, therefore, there's no reason to suspect me of being behind the assassin exchange.
Hold it! Hold it. Certainly as it stands, there is no evidence to suggest that you concocted the scheme.
Objection!
Objection!
But as it stands, we have only the accused's insistence of his innocence. Sorry? Perhaps there is some reason that would explain why he masterminded the assassin exchange. And if a reason could be established later in these proceedings, then the accused's claim in his testimony that he wasn't involved would amount to perjury. Well, yes, that's true, but clearly Kazuma-sama intends to identify a reason and use it to make its case. So if we don't identify something first, he'll gain the advantage. This could be very dangerous.
Objection! What is this? An autopsy report? Wait, this is 10 years old, from the autopsy of Claude Clint Van Zykes. What? My brother's autopsy report?
I'm pleased to see. The defense doesn't intend to run from the undeniable truth.
Order in court. What reason do you have for presenting a 10-year-old autopsy here, counsel?
The autopsy report of the professor's final victim, is an indelible link between Inspector Gregson, Dr. Wilson, and the defendant.
Not that accursed name again. The professor.
I've personally researched all the court records relating to that case. I know that at the time, autopsy was considered sacrilege to the victim's souls. And for a member of the aristocracy to like Lord Clint Van Zykes, it was unthinkable. But someone implored the powers that be to allow the autopsy to go ahead. Inspector Gregson. He declared that he was certain he would obtain conclusive proof from the procedure. And it was Dr. Wilson who conducted the autopsy. His signature is clearly visible on the document.
As promised by Gregson, the autopsy report did indeed produce evidence. Evidence that conclusively proved Genshin Asogi was guilty of the murders. By my brother's dying moments, he mustered all his remaining strength to leave that vital clue behind. Indeed, that was the key to indicting the professor for his crimes and the conclusive evidence that convicted him. It enabled Lord Van Zykes here to avenge his brother's senseless death with a marvelous victory in court.
A marvelous victory, was it? I wonder if that's really true. What? Could the same be said if it turned out that the key piece of evidence in question was in fact fabricated? If the inspector, the coroner, and the prosecutor all colluded together to cast an innocent Japanese man as a mass murderer and send him to his death?
That's outrageous!
And now, 10 years later, for some reason, the secret has been threatened and needs protecting. Which is why the inspector and the coroner had to be silenced, isn't it? By someone in power in Japan and Britain, using the two killers recruited for the assassin exchange.
Order! Order at once!
10 years ago, my father was convicted in this very courtroom as a mass murderer, to be sentenced to death. But it was all a sham, and I swore to myself that I'd prove it.
which is why I had to come to Britain. Whatever the cost. You'll have to forgive me if I feel compelled to toast this vengeful Nipponese's tenacity of purpose here. However, he who fails to quash his emotions in the courtroom has failed as a lawyer. Come on, Kazuma, you know this won't wash. You're claiming your father was misrepresented in a trial that took place a whole decade ago. You must see that without evidence, that's nothing more than a wild accusation. As it happens, I have evidence. What? As the court has heard, I crossed the channel to France with Gregson on the 31st. I went with him on the pretext of being the assassin recruited to kill Saishiro Jigoku. But my true intentions were to make the inspector tell me the truth. What truth? The truth about evidence. About the evidence, and he acknowledged what I'd already deduced. There's a closely guarded secret about what went on in the autopsy 10 years ago. What? A secret? I know nothing of any secret. While we waited for my supposed mark in Jigoku's cabin, I drew my clan's illustrious sword, Karama, before the inspector's eyes. He very quickly understood what my true motive was. Right, I see. You're that Asogi's young lad, are you? No. Fish and chips. Right, I see. You're that Asogi's young lad, are you? And what? You're gonna cut me down with that thing? Is that it? That will very much depend on the answers you give to my questions. I want to know what really happened 10 years ago. The truth, that's all.
Before we get into it, let me make one thing clear. I still believe your father was the professor. There's no doubt in my mind. But unfortunately back then, we didn't have the evidence we needed to make the crime stick.
So, you admit it then? The evidence used in my father's trial was fabricated?
It was for the good of the country. Anyway, I was just following orders.
Orders? What exactly did you do? Speak!
I'm not saying another word.
Even if your life depends on it.
That's right. Even then.
So that's when the tip of the sword broke. Oh, Kazuma-sama. If the results of Clint Van Zyk's autopsy were fabricated, then the investigating officer, Gregson, and the lead coroner, Wilson, must have known about it. And they can only have been ordered to pervert the course of justice in that way by one man. The man leading the case for the prosecution, Barak Van Zyk's. Strongheart was also leading the case, though. It depends what order things happened in.
In other words, the defendant did have a cause to organize this exchange of assassins.
Exactly. And as we established earlier, it has to have been the Reaper himself who liaised with Jigoku in Japan to arrange the exchange. So it follows that the Reaper's true identity can only be that of the man who stands accused in the courtroom today, Barak Van Zyk's.
Objection!
Objection. Kazuma Asogi. What? What you've just told the court, are you absolutely certain of your facts? Did Gregson really fabricate evidence for that trial 10 years ago? I heard it with my own ears. His shameful admission.
In that case, I know the name of the Reaper.
What? Lord Van Zykes?
I gave no such orders. I know that for certain. Which narrows down the remaining possibilities to one.
Strongheart prosecuted the case. Strongheart wants to become the Attorney General. Strongheart was benefiting from the Reaper. Strongheart benefited from the Professor's killings. If Lord Van Zykes isn't the one behind all this, then yes, there is only one other person who could have done something like that. It is obvious. I believe I know who it is, too.
You?
I just had a feeling this name was going to come up. The true identity of the infamous Reaper of the Bailey is...
Take that!
Take that! The only person who could have arranged the assassin exchange and manipulated the autopsy results is the Lord Chief Justice himself, Lord Mayor Strongheart.
What? Lord Strongheart?
Yes, it's true that 10 years ago, the defendant handled the prosecution of the Professor in court, but he only took over the case after his brother, Lord Clint Van Zykes, had been killed.
Yeah. I can only assume that this is the most inappropriate joke in the British judicial history.
Well, Lord Van Zykes,
10 years ago, I was very new to my profession, but I had a burning desire to avenge my brother's death, so I pleaded for control of the case. The investigation to that point, the supplication of the Lords to allow my brother's corpse to be examined, all the evidence I was given, the autopsy reports, it all came from you. I've spent my life since then believing I was in your debt for the way you stood aside and let me handle the trial. But I see now. I was very much mistaken.
it was a hugely influential force that caused the Inspector and the Coroner to break the law 10 years ago. And that same force was still felt a decade later on the other side of the world by Seishiro Jigoku. Lord Strongheart, everything falls into place when we recognize that you are the Reaper of the Bailey.
But fucking slap. The court awaits your response, my lord. This may very well go down in British judicial history, but I assure you, it is no joke. Consider this a formal accusal by the defence. It doesn't warrant a response. A formal accusal? Don't be absurd. The defence's claims are utter nonsense. A wild fantasy at best.
You're not going to defend yourself.
You claim there was some wrongdoing with Lord Clint Van Zykes' autopsy. That's utterly untrue.
Objection!
Objection!
But I heard it from Gregson's own lips. He admitted to it.
And where is your evidence?
What?
Gregson's dead now, unless you were thinking of summoning a ghost to the stand.
You mean to say?
I forget how the system works in your little backwater country, but in the courts of the British Empire, without evidence, there is no case. I have no intention of entertaining some wild fantasy that can't possibly be substantiated by anyone or anything.
Something about the autopsy being fake. Please.
Ah! Order in court. Following Inspector Gregson's murder and in light of the Dr. Wilson's death as well, there's really no one left who could testify about the events of 10 years ago, is there?
So that was the real purpose of the assassin exchange.
This court has no business raking over the coals of a case that was conducted a decade ago. The acquittal brought by the prosecution and the defense is categorically denied. I take it there are no objections.
Kazuma, he's more or less waited his whole life for this moment. Is there really nothing else we can do now? Is there no other avenue we can go down in pursuit of the truth about what happened all those years ago? If only there was someone who could testify about Clint Van Zykes' autopsy. There is. Mikotoba. He's gone to extraordinary lengths to cover his tracks. Even so far as dispatching an assassin all the way to Japan to ensure Dr. Wilson's silence. And Dr. Side won't say anything against Strongheart. And Dr. Side won't say anything against Strongheart. But there's still one ray of hope. Objection! Actually, there is one person who could still testify about that autopsy.
Don't be ridiculous. There's no one left.
Who, Ryunosuke? Who? Tell me.
Kazuma,
Please, this trial can't end. Not yet.
I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for the truth. The person the defense would like to call to the stand to testify about the autopsy of Lord Clint Van Zykes is... Take that!
Heaven help us. Another Japanese.
An expert in forensic medicine, my lord. Professor Yujin Mikotoba. 16 years ago, he came to London with Seishiro Jigoku and Genshin Asogi as a visiting student.
And what could his testimony possibly tell us?
Professor Mikotoba was the primary assistant during the autopsy in question. He was also the person who actually penned the report.
Incorrect. The autopsy was carried out by the coroner, Dr. Wilson. The report carries his signature.
It was the primary assistant's duty to keep a written record of the coroner's work during the procedure. In actual fact, the coroner merely read over the report at the end and signed it. In other words, Professor Mikotoba witnessed the entire autopsy from start to finish. The defense demands that Professor Mikotoba be summoned as a witness as a matter of urgency. Whatever really happened in that autopsy laboratory 10 years ago is something only he can tell us.
The defense's demand is denied.
What? But Professor Mikotoba is in London at this very moment. We could summon him in a witness to the stand in minutes. No, of course he's not going to agree to it. Strongheart has no intention of summoning anyone who knows. He's too concerned about protecting himself.
Prosecutor Asogi, let me refresh your memory, as you seem to have forgotten the prosecutor's stance. The prosecution's stance. Only minutes ago, you accused the defendant of being the Reaper and masterminding the assassin exchange.
I did, yes.
So present your evidence for those claims and make your case complete.
At this time, I don't have the requisite evidence. But that's exactly why we need witness testimony.
The professor case is closed. There are no clues in the distant past that will bolster your argument today. I'm afraid to say, Prosecutor Asogi, that you would appear to be possessed by the spirit of your late homicidal father.
Ah!
Now, as I stated earlier, this court has already reached a conclusion with respect to the matter at hand. Inspector Gregson was murdered by Japanese Supreme Court Judge Seishiro Jigoku. As for any hidden circumstances that may exist, they will be investigated in due course by the proper authorities. Me.
Objection!
Objection. But we all know what will happen. That'll just give the mastermind of this whole venture time to cover his tracks again.
By which you mean me. Your punishment for this contemptible behavior will be decided at a later date. As for you, Prosecutor Asogi, you will be reprimanded following these proceedings. Willingly, I trust, since you gave your word.
Ah!
This futile game of revenge is over, young Master Asogi.
Ah! Ah! Ah!
That will be all. I hereby declare this trial to be over. Court is...
Hold it!
I know it.
Hold it!
Mr. Sholmes.
This is no place for an amateur detection, Mr. Sholmes. May I remind you that these proceedings are closed to the general public. You will leave the courtroom at once.
Objection!
Objection. Mr. Sholmes was instrumental in the apprehension of Seishiro Jigoku before he fled from Europe. The court should hear what he has to say.
Lord Mail Strongheart, it's imperative that you refrain from bringing this trial to an end at this stage.
Is it really? And why would that be?
You need only recall your own words from the opening of the trial to answer that question, if I may. We will stop at nothing to uncover the whole truth behind these disturbing findings. Surely it can't be. But the shock of being accused of being the Reaper yourself has erased that from your memory, can it?
The whole truth, sir, has already been uncovered.
It would seem that we have a great many important members of the judiciary present here today. I put it to you, my dear fellows, should the trial end at this juncture? After all, why have you been invited to attend? But not along to the... After all, why have you been invited to attend? To nod along to the prevarications of your superiors?
Order, order in court.
It seems to me that we stand before a door that leads to a new era of legal practices, a door that is ajar. Let us emerge from the shadows of the Reaper's decade-long ascendancy. For you and you alone, my dear fellows, have the power to push this door open now.
The auditors in the gallery have no rights to express an opinion on court proceedings. Silence!
He's right. The judge has absolute authority here. Yes, if he calls the trial to an end, it must end. Will that really do? I sense dark things occurring behind the scenes. Dark things indeed. Is there a single person here present who can honestly say the same? What? Honestly doesn't sense the same. What? The trial should go on. Summon the witness. That's right. We need to clear this up before that young Japanese fellow is reprimanded in custody. My lord, you assured those present that you would uncover the whole truth here. Vindicate yourself on this outlandish accusation. The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. That's the very foundation of British law.
A toast to my dependable colleagues in the gallery.
Testify! 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 Holy fuck.
Well, my lord, you hear the voice of the British Justice, I take it. I think you'll find me rather awkward to silence.
Testify! Testify! Fucking hell! Holy fuck! Holy fuck! Holy fuck! Holy fuck! Holy fuck! What the fuck? This is the fucking most epic fucking thing ever. What the fuck? Give me that. Give me this water. What the fuck was that scene? That was so good. Shooter Kumi. He built up the tension just right. Oh my god. Oh my god, yes. Come on. Let's do it. Let's fuck this guy up.
The court will recess briefly. I have no intention of shrinking from these allegations. Bailiff, arrange for the subpoena of the witness at once. As soon as the gentleman arrives at the courthouse, we shall reconvene.
A recess won't be necessary, my lord.
Pardon?
Mikodama is a close friend of mine. He accompanied me today and is waiting in the antechamber as we speak. I do believe he's enjoying a little trip down memory lane, in fact. What? Professor Mikodama is here in the courthouse? Mr. Sholmes, you didn't know this would happen, did you? My dear fellow, no one is in a better position to answer that question than you, surely. I wasn't just asking for the fun of it, you know.
Well, I must thank you for your assistance in this matter, Mr. Sholmes. However, you are of no further use here. Kindly leave the courtroom at once.
But of course, in truth, I find myself rather busy now as a result of these developments. Mr. Naruhodo.
Ah, yes.
I trust you have Iris's little lucky charm with you.
Absolutely. It's still in my pocket.
She sends her regards, and a reminder. If you find yourself at a dead end, the ears are at your disposal. Just one tug, if you please.
Oh, of course.
In that case, the trial will continue without delay. Bailiff, show the witness to the stand.
So it's Lord Strongheart. He's the Reaper of the Bailey. Where exactly is this child going to take me, I wonder? Just how deep am I about to be plunged into the blackness of the abyss? Well, I'm ready. I'm ready to head into the heart of this maelstrom and confront whatever horrors it tries to drown me under. Maelstrom, maelstrom heart. Holy fucking shit, dude. Does it get any more epic than this? That's it, I need to end the stream here. That was way too epic. I have to calm down, ready for the finale. Oh my god, what the fuck? Holy fuck. Holy crap, that was insane. Oh my god. I just want to watch that scene again. It was so good. I'll tell you what, just for fun, to end the stream, let's do the 2 decisions wrong. Well, it is possible, my lord. What? How could you? Do you think I want to believe it? But the fact is, I can't say with complete certainty what actually happened, because I wasn't there. You disappoint me, Ryunosuke. If I may, Mr. Naruhodo, I think perhaps that's why we form opinions based on evidence. Ah, so true. And actually, we have evidence that can settle this argument conclusively. My lord, the defense would like to present evidence to...
Before you plough on, feigning ignorance of what just occurred, Counsel, you must be penalized for that short but embarrassing you uttered a moment ago.
I really thought I could just brush past it if I was quick enough. Never mind the penalty, Mr. Naruhodo. The truth is all that matters. Judge Jigoku. That's your mind. Okay. Oh, there's no decision here. Holy fuck. Oh man, I'm still calming down from the epicness of that scene. Testify! 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 Oh my god, get wrecked, Lord Strongheart. And also the whole bit with Kazuma where he thinks he's defeated. Oh man. Brilliant. Brilliant. It couldn't be any better than that. Why didn't they use when Shom said hold it, I wonder why they didn't use his like objection voice line, because he actually has an objection voice line. And I can present the evidence to prove it. Right? Yeah.
Objection!
Objection! It would have been so funny if I had this turned on for it. He just rocks up to the courtroom like that. Oh my god. Right. I'm gonna end it there. That was way too cool.